Hey everyone, Antonia Lojudice here from StayHungryBeFoolish.com, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Ayisha Issa, who currently stands as one of the best practitioners of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at her level in Quebec. Ayisha, thank you so much and welcome. Thank you for being here and taking out time out of your busy schedule for us.
Well, thanks. As I told you before, I appreciate you being patient with me, so I thank you.
Thank you. Now, Ayisha, apart from
Yes.
training and competing, you're a regular on the popular Quebec TV series Unité Neuf, which has close to 2 million viewers across the province. You have a featured role in the movie Brick Mansion, which features the late Paul Walker, and you already had three roles in three different movies, right? Warm Bodies, La Pat, and Immortals. If you can take us back a little, because your road to success has really not been an easy one. And growing up for you, you had a little bit of a troubled adolescent. Can you tell us a little bit about that period in your life?
I realize as I get older more and more about why I behaved certain ways, about cause and effect throughout life and things like that. But basically, that period of my life was kind of a stage where everything that had happened beforehand was starting to manifest itself. Right? Because like when you become a teenager, you're no longer a kid anymore. So you have this kind of a wake up moment where you're like, you're thinking for yourself, and you realize that your body kind of moves by itself, so you don't necessarily have to follow the rules, and you start to grow, and it's that strange kind of self discovery phase. So I think for me it was kind of a waking up of a lot of anger issues and a lot of anxiety issues, and things that I would have to deal with for years to come, and that I'm still kind of working on in a lot of ways. It's just a lot easier now than it was then.
And what kind of periods had you gone through that made it so much of a troubled period in your life for you? Did you get into any, I don't know, bad habits or bad actions or things like that?
Yeah, I think that basically, growing up, I never really learned how to manage negative emotions properly, manage
Okay.
stress. But I was in a very stressful situation that can, in a lot of ways was just traumatic for any kid, I think. So I just didn't really have the tools to deal with that. I never really learned the tools to deal with that. And I think that it was difficult for people to help me develop those tools because I didn't even know what tools I was missing. I didn't know how to express my emotions. So it was just kind of like a really crappy place to be. For sure, I developed bad habits from a young age. Like I did some really interesting things to kind of I think assert what I thought anyways was my sense of self or identity. Unfortunately, because of outside circumstances and kind of like the message that your environment provides for you, my perception of self was not necessarily a positive one, and so that's what I was manifesting, right?
Right.
Um, I'll give you an example.
Okay.
I don't like people who are close to me know this, but I don't really put it out there that much. But I'm going to put it out there just because I think that if any young people can relate to this, then they might hear it out, or if somebody recognizes a kid who's kind of like this. But I got my first tattoo. I only have one tattoo, but I got it when I was 14. Yeah, there you go. That's the kind of thing I managed to get myself into doing. Like, I don't know who I thought that I was, punishing or whatever with that, but yeah, that's the kind of thing that I would do. It was like almost going out there and like finding the things that were supposed to be bad and then using them as a way to build up my idea of myself, because that's kind of just what I thought that the world outside expected of me.
Okay. Yeah. And I think that many of us, Aisha, I think at some point we end up feeling trapped, like in a place that we don't want to be. I don't know whether it's a job, a relationship, or a hardship. Like, I mean, for you, it was issues of growing up as a teenager. I think that taking that first step is probably the hardest one in making a change. What made you take that first step in wanting to make a change, and maybe what was that first step?
Well, I like it was the whole thing happened really fast. Like I went from being, trying really hard at least to please everybody around me to just like being like, this isn't working. Like no matter what I'm doing, it doesn't seem like I was getting the response that I needed. And so I just kind of was like really downhill really fast. And, looking back on it, the teen years are really not that big of a part of your life, but it's so significant that it seems like it lasts twice as long as it really does, right? Like when you think of the age of, let's say, 13 to 18, that doesn't last, or it seems like it lasts
Forever.
20 years, right? Like but when you hit your 20s and it feels like it lasted 5 years, so it doesn't last that long. But the amount of things that I went through, like the laundry list of like issues that I had, is I look back on it now and I'm like, how did I have time to have that many problems? I have no idea how I had time to have that many problems. And it's kind of scary because I didn't realize the magnitude, I guess you could say, of the situation and the danger of these issues, and if they had gone any further, what they could have become. But the first step, I think, was, I think there's a part of me that's just a very stubborn individual. You know what I mean? Like I've always been one who asks maybe too many questions. I don't take things necessarily. I was always that kid in school who was like, if my teacher can't explain to me the why and the why of the why, then a problem just accepting their credibility. That was kind of my attitude. So, at some point I was just kind of like, okay, I'm miserable. There must be something more to life. Why does everybody else seem so much happier than me? Okay. So whatever this image is that I feel that's being projected onto me, that I feel obligated to reflect back, I guess you could say, is not working for me. And so I kind of it's funny because I was, and still am in a lot of ways, kind of like a bit of an outsider, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But the difference is that, like, I think that what really, like, that point was just kind of like when I stopped caring so much about what everybody else was thinking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What I thought that everybody else expected of me. And I just started kind of trying to figure myself out for myself and for my own opinions and my own judgments of what made sense and what didn't. Because a big problem that I was having, I think, is that conflict between what makes sense and what people or, the environment is kind of suggesting makes sense. Yeah. If they don't go together, it can be a very stressful, thing to live through, a stressful experience. So eventually I just got really tired of being stressed out. And, at that point, I think it was kind of like, if you're going to do this, as in living at all, and, sometimes there were points where that was in serious question too, whether or not that's something that was even an option, because I just, at points I didn't see any other way of doing it. But when I came to that point, I was like, okay, so let's give this one last try type thing. And that's kind of always how it was, right? Let's just give it one last try. Let's just try this one last thing. And so this one thing, I think, was, okay, let's try not doing everything that you're doing, or not just reevaluating everything and just doing everything backwards, we'll say.
Oh, that's
I don't know if
amazing.
that makes sense. I kind of it's hard to explain. Like I said, it's hard to explain.
No, I think it makes perfect sense. I think you started off first with an awareness, having an awareness of yourself and the situation you were in and what it was doing. And at some point from that awareness, you got a little bit of an understanding, saying that, okay, this is not working out for me because I'm not as happy as I should be. Because I think you said something very important when you mentioned others' expectations. I mean, in today's society, I think we're surrounded so much by others, whether it's society, the media, I don't know, our friends, our co-workers. And we tend to forget who we are, and we try to live sort of like a lie.
Yeah, it's definitely that process, like you said, and it definitely always starts with an awareness. And so, I try to encourage anybody that I speak to who asks me about that kind of stuff, is kind of like, if you question something, if you're not sure about something, if something seems off, look into it and don't stop until you find an answer. And if you are determined to find that answer, if you're determined to find the solution, you will eventually get there. You'll fail 1,000,005 times, but like you will eventually get there. And each time you try and each time you fail, you get a little bit tougher and a little bit smarter and a little bit wiser and a little bit closer to where you want to be. And another point that I wanted to bring up is that that takes a certain sense of responsibility for yourself too. I think that it's very easy in life to do just that, which is to, kind of just be like, okay, well, life is really difficult to figure out. I don't know where I fit in here. This doesn't really feel right, but I don't have the courage or the strength to find the solution. So I'm just going to follow whatever anybody else tells me to do. I'm just going to like do what everyone else is doing. And if it doesn't work out, well, I just did what I was supposed to do. Or, I just followed what everybody told me to do. And then you kind of have an excuse for not meeting your full potential. So I think that, you have to take a certain responsibility for yourself, and you have to say like, okay, so I'm willing to take a responsibility if this goes well, and I'm willing to take responsibility if it doesn't go well. And I just at a certain point in your life, it's just, whatever happened before, it does have its place, absolutely, and it's good to you definitely have to understand it, to understand where you are and where you're going, and the potential, how do you say, the potential obstacles you might face, right? Mm-hmm. But it doesn't have to continue to rule your life. Like at some point, it's up to you to decide if you want to sit there and focus and point the finger, or if you want to find answers and figure out how you can move your way out of there.
Oh, absolutely. And you mentioned a little bit on a few things which makes me think of your mom. At some point, I know that your mom during your like rebellious adolescent years has certain expectations of you. Did you ever blame, because you had mentioned like pointing finger, did you ever actually blame your mom at all for the expectations that she had on you, and how did you deal with that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's definitely, and I think that on different levels, depending on the situation that you're growing up in, I think that everybody has something, like some kind of bone to pick with their parents, right? Like, I don't know if any, as strong or as close as a relationship may be, I don't know anybody who doesn't have a bone to pick with somebody, with anybody else. Like, and if there is, someone's lying about something usually. Mm-hmm. So yeah, for sure. The difference is that when you're a teenager, you're still kind of a kid, and it's still kind of, you're still growing and learning, and you're still, being guided and molded and all this stuff. But again, like, it comes down to taking responsibility. At a certain point, you're old enough to understand, or to know enough to take steps yourself to find solutions and to know what works for you and what doesn't. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that all parents have expectations for their kids. I think that if a parent doesn't have any expectation for their kids at all, I don't know how you can go about parenting if you don't have expectations, right?
Absolutely.
Just, growing up and throughout life, I also learned a lot about I guess the more you learn about yourself, right, and your own struggles, your own shortcomings, and whatnot, it's harder to be so hard on everybody else. You know what I mean? At least if you're being relatively fair about it, right? Mm-hmm. Like, if you consider the fact that on a certain level, all people kind of have generally the same kind of mechanisms, right? The same way of functioning and thinking. That means that if you're capable of making a mistake, then other people are capable of making mistakes too. And you can't accept that or acknowledge that, you're going to have a really hard time with yourself, for sure. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I learned a lot about, the learning process. I'm somebody who learns by doing, and I have to try and fail things and learn lessons by myself. You can tell me things as much as you want. If I decide it's something that I'm going to do and risk, then there's no one who's going to stop me, Yeah. And so yeah, parenting in itself is just a big trial and error, and there's no guaranteed way of doing it. So
yeah, and at the end of the day, we end up realizing that it came from a place of love, right? Like, no parent.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think that again, like, I think that all teenagers, is something that they don't necessarily understand at that time. And it's difficult because if whatever is going on is not really working for them, they're not at an age where they're allowed, like I said before, to take full responsibility for themselves and do whatever, and I don't know how to explain it. Sorry. But you know, it's difficult at that age. But you know, I'm past that age now. It's been, you know, I'm 30 years old now. So the way I see it is that all this stuff has formed me and built me, and it was kind of at a certain point, you know, put there, and it's up to you to decide how you're going to see it and what it's going to become. So you can either let it be something that destroys you, whatever it is. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
My dad left when I was younger too. You know what I mean? At a certain point, I had to stop letting that destroy me, right? So you have a choice. Like either let it destroy you, or either let it help you build character, and you know, let it help you grow or become stronger in other ways, or understand things differently, or help others in certain ways, or whatever. Like it's up to you to decide what you do with it. The
Yeah.
choice is there. It's good and bad always in the same. It's up to you to decide how you're going to manifest it. But again, like I had a choice, and I've been on both sides. I've been on the sides where it was just complete, like all these things were just eating me up and tearing me down, and dissolving me. And then I realized that I had the power to make it the complete opposite. And once I took that decision and that responsibility for myself, sure enough, I was able to recreate my reality. As you know,
Yeah.
funny as that sounds or whatever. A lot of people don't believe in that, but it's true. Like I don't have any other way of explaining it.
And actually, we spoke a little bit earlier about jiu-jitsu. So that played a huge, huge role in your life, and I think it turned things around for you. You're doing competitions now. You're considered as one of the best in at your level in Quebec. What inspired you, Ayisha, to actually start practicing it, and how did it change your life?
Okay, well, it inspired how the interest was inspired. I've always had some kind of activity in my life. That's one of the things that, from when I was a kid, my sister and I both had to have some kind of an activity. So it didn't matter really what we did, but we had to be doing something outside of school. You know, sitting at home and watching television just wasn't an option. So when I moved out of the house and I was by myself, it's just something that I guess instinctively I realized that I kind of needed to remain somewhat balanced, you know.
Okay.
And so I had started going to the regular gym and like lifting weights, and it's bored me to do that. I did it because it was exercise, served its purpose, and made me feel good, got the endorphins going, but I didn't particularly enjoy it.
Mm.
And then I met somebody who was a very high level of martial arts, and who had done a whole bunch of them, and not having understood anything about it myself, and just being curious and asking questions as usual. I just, you know, started inquiring and asking, and you know, I decided to look up and look into it a little bit more, and I found women's kickboxing, and then from there I was just encouraged to try some of the other classes that were held at the school. So again, I guess my curiosity served me well. I ended up trying the class, and then not too long after that, I am at BTT now, which is where I train.
Yeah.
And I have been on and off, just because my life has been on and off, I guess, with a whole bunch of stuff and all these different things happening. But it's something that I've realized is not ever going to disappear. I'm never really going to be able to like completely walk away from it. So at this stage, I'm happy that I've accepted that this is like now a solid part of my life that is going to continue to grow. As
Mm.
far as the changes that it's had, or the effects, the positive effects that it's had, I started about 5 years ago. And by that time, I had already changed a lot since I was a teenager. I'd done a lot of work on myself, and I had a lot of other problems too in those first 5 years of my 20s. But there were like a whole other bunch of problems, you know. But I had gotten over the eating disorders. I had gotten more comfortable with my body, more accepting of myself, things like that. But I still had kind of the mentality, or that kind of obsessive tendency to like kind of count out calories of what I was eating, and you know, if I was eating too much, or if I saw something, I always had to question whether or not I could eat it, and then I'd have to remind myself that I'm not in that stage anymore, and to, you know, I was still going through that. when I started doing jujitsu, what was interesting is that I guess you could say my obsessive thought process went from what can I eat and what's this and, are my muscles too big or this and, about all those kind of thoughts and went directly to, okay, what do I need to do to get better at this? Like,
Okay.
that's all that mattered. All of a sudden I was like, oh, this is, what is this? I wanted to know more. I wanted to learn more techniques. I wanted to be good at it. I was training with almost all guys, very, very few girls. So, they're a lot stronger than you, they're a lot bigger than you, and you have to have energy to train. They're a very committed groups. Jiu-jitsu guys and girls are like, it's crazy. For the most part, they train so, they're so dedicated to it. It's really an integrated part of their life. And so, I had to kind of figure this out. And in order to fit jiu-jitsu and to be able to kind of do it, I had to start organizing myself and start organizing my life and start developing not bad habits, but developing good habits. And so yeah, I started eating started researching health and nutrition and started eating a lot more protein and this and that. And I gained like 30 pounds, but it was like 30 pounds worth of muscle, like healthy muscle mass. That's a lot. You know what I mean? And I had so much more energy. I was a lot happier. I was more vibrant. I was more confident in myself. I used to have, and this is common for a lot of women actually, especially black women, but sewn in extensions, right? And this is not against anybody who wears them or anything like that. Everybody has their thing, and I wore them for years. But an example of how jiu-jitsu changed me kind of in this roundabout way is that you sweat a lot in jiu-jitsu, and like you're not supposed to wash these extensions constantly, and I had to be able to wash my hair every day, so I stopped wearing them. And at first it was like this, this thing on my head that made me that I associated directly to my value in society, or like how pretty I was, how attractive I was, all this stuff. And so to take it off and to have like short hair, like, and whatever, like, it was scary, but at the same time it was extremely liberating because it wasn't a very long adjustment period either, because again, jiu-jitsu, not having to worry about that made me have more to focus on what I was doing. Wearing makeup, I used to wear makeup all the time, and I'm wearing a little bit now because we're doing an interview, but on a daily basis, I don't wear makeup anymore, and I have, pigmentation marks, and these are things that, like, again, plagued me all through high school and all through my 20s, and I never felt that I could leave anywhere without makeup on. I didn't feel like I could go swimming because my face or my hair would get wet, like all these things, and now I'm like, I don't have time, like, you know what I mean? I almost feel more insecure now when I'm wearing makeup when I go out than I do when I'm not. Which is interesting, like I feel a lot more insecure actually than I do now, and these are all things that I attribute to jiu-jitsu. It gave me something to value in myself more than
the physical appearance.
The physical appearance, yeah.
Oh, that's amazing, and I think actually that is something in society now, and probably in teenagers or young women in their 20s. About the physical appearance. So you build a self-confidence within yourself, with what was inside of you instead of what was outside of you, which is hard.
It is hard, but once you do it, like there's almost no turning back, and it's so much stronger and so much more solid and makes so much more sense that it's really worth the effort of, not falling into the trap of feeling like you have to do these things in the first place. And B, if you are in that cycle, to slowly try to ask yourself why, and to try to not do it anymore. Like, don't get me wrong, I love wearing makeup. Like, I like the process of putting it on. I have clip-on extensions. Pretty sure everyone at the gym has seen me come in with short hair or leave with long hair if I have an audition or whatever. But the thing is that I'm very open about it now, and I don't have to feel like, for me, these are accessories and things that I do to add, and it's like a nice shirt or a dress or whatever.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily make me feel more or less as far as who I am as a person. And it's super important. I think that a lot of teenagers don't have that kind of support, I guess you could say, or they don't necessarily have enough reminders that they should be developing the inner qualities, and all this outer stuff is just kind of fun stuff that is there to add for
Exactly.
fun. You know, yeah.
Yeah.
They get it mixed up really easily, and I think society just completely overlooks the fact that they get it crossed and they mix it up. You know.
Absolutely. So you don't identify yourself with these things. They're just there for fun type of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you got involved with acting. uh,
Yeah.
and I think this is really interesting. I think your first acting role was one of the priestesses in the movie Immortals, right? Ayisha, if correct me if I'm wrong, you had absolutely no acting experience whatsoever,
Uh,
right? On the first
yeah.
one, or but
Yeah.
so how did this happen for you?
Okay. Well, it's before acting. I was doing some modeling,
Oh, okay.
but like that was again towards the beginning of my 20s, and I didn't last very long. I'm not built. I don't know if you can see me here, but like this is just jujitsu training. I'm not doing any weights right now. I'm just eating really well. I have a really great nutritionist and everything, and so this is just the way I'm built. This is not your typical runway model's build. The only thing that I really have in common with your typical runway model is the fact that I'm tall. Apart from that, it doesn't work. But anyways, all that aside, I kind of, again, when I started doing jiu-jitsu, I had to stop, and I was on and off. I had a job at a hotel, and the hours and the scheduling and the amount of work that I was putting in on my own time also made it that I was just not able to train for a long time. And I ended up losing my job. And the only thing that I had really at the time was jiu-jitsu. And I kind of threw myself into it 100%. I was trained, well, jiu-jitsu mainly, but I was doing Muay Thai too. I was going out and boxing in the West Island. I was like just really focused on training. And I was extremely happy. But it was supposed to be temporary. And until I could figure out what my next job was going to be. I knew that it wasn't like the hotel business. That whole thing I wasn't really feeling it. I was doing it because it seemed like a nice, steady social job, the kind of thing you're supposed to do and whatever. And so I was just kind of taking time to figure out what other options I might have. And this really just crossed my path. I wasn't looking into it at all. I mean, I couldn't model really. Like, I could, but it was just, I was really turned off from that whole thing. And again, at this point, I was like 180 pounds, solid, and I was like, I'm not, the industry doesn't accept girls that look like me, and I'm not even, and that's okay, like I'm happy doing what I'm doing. So when I got the call for the audition, I thought it was I thought it was an illegitimate call, kind of, in the sense that I thought that maybe there was an exaggeration somewhere, or that, there was something. It just didn't make any sense, right? Because you get a phone call out of nowhere asking you if you want to go audition for a role in this huge movie with all these big actors, and I was like, I have to go to the gym. I don't have time for this. And it's kind of like, are you sure? Okay. I ended up calling my sister, and she said, you're going to be at the gym 1 or 2 more times today anyway, so why don't you just show up a little bit later, go. No. And I'm glad that I listened to her. I didn't know what I was doing. I showed up and just I didn't have that extra pressure either of having to worry about if my acting technique was on point, or like, do you know what I mean? I did everything wrong. Like, I was sitting on the floor here, the microphone's there, I'm looking over here. I did like everything that I now understand that you're not really supposed to do in auditions. But I guess I was just acting for real. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but it gave me a certain freedom to just to really act from within and not have to care or worry about everybody else's opinion, because no one could expect anything of me. I wasn't even supposed to be there that day,
Yeah.
And yeah, so I didn't think I got it, because I didn't hear anything for several months after that, and I wasn't bothered by it either. I went back to doing exactly what I was doing. And when they did call, I thought it was great. It was a fantastic opportunity, and I right there was a great example of everything happening for a reason, right? Like, if I hadn't lost my job, I never would have said, I never would have said, oh yeah, I'll take some time off work to go. I never would have said that. But since I didn't have one, I was kind of free to
Right.
go and do this audition and experience something different. So I'm glad that I was open to the opportunity. I'm glad that I took the chance. Um, once I got, once I got that part, though, I still didn't really think of it as something that I could do career-wise. I just thought that it was a great opportunity, and I didn't really take it seriously for a little while, actually, until I didn't really start taking it seriously until phone calls stopped coming in by themselves, and all that stuff. Then all of a sudden I was like, but what if I can't do this anymore? What if I have to go back and work at a hotel? And then I started freaking out, and I was like, oh no. And I really thought that I had kind of screwed up this fantastic opportunity I had by not investing in something that I really enjoyed. And what I realized and learned about myself is that I wasn't investing in it because I liked it so much that I was scared that if I invested in it and then it didn't work out, that I'd be heartbroken. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I realized that by not investing in it, I would have been heartbroken anyways because it wouldn't have worked out. So I might as well invest in it and,
Right. Yeah.
and see what happens. So yeah, so now I can say that I take it more seriously in the sense that I prepare a lot more for my auditions, for sure. I do a lot more research for my characters. I try my best to learn as much as I can about the other sides of the business that just don't come naturally to me at all.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, I really hope that I get the chance to continue to do this work because it's opened up a lot of opportunities to do a lot of other things that are just really important to me, other projects that are important to me and whatnot.
Oh, that's amazing, and I know you're really busy, but given your experience, Aisha, before I let you go, if there would be maybe a message, we'll call it like a message for anyone who feels stuck in a place like that they don't want to be, whatever that would be, but they're afraid. Some people they're stuck. Either they're afraid of the unknown, so they kind of like it becomes their comfort zone, and they say, "Oh, I might as well stay here. At least I won't have to." So, what message would you give to someone who would be afraid in taking those steps towards making a change, given your experience?
I think when you get to a place where you're terrified of making it, where I think it's more a question of terrified that you're not capable of making a change, right? Like that's usually the case because there's being scared and but knowing that if you do it, everything will be okay, and then there's being scared because again, like I had mentioned, if you're scared that if you do invest in it or you do try and you do fail, that you'll be set further back than where you are now. And I heard a story. I was watching a seminar on YouTube, and I remember hearing a guy tell a story about a man and his dog sitting on the porch, right? And there's another, his neighbor every day walks by his porch, and his dog is moaning in pain, and every night this guy walks by his porch and his dog's there, and the guy's sitting on his balcony reading his paper, like completely ignoring the dog. So eventually, one day the neighbor stops at the porch and says, "Excuse me, sir, but your dog seems to be like, seems like he's in a lot of pain right now." And the guy says, "Oh, him? He's yeah, I guess." And the guy's like, don't you love your dog? Like, what's going on? Your dog is suffering." And he goes, "No, he's just lying on a nail." The guy's like, "Your dog's lying on a nail? Like,
Do something.
do something, like and he goes, no, he's lying on a nail, but it obviously doesn't bother him that much, or he'd get up and he'd move." And that's a very good point, right? That's the way that people kind of are. Like, I mean, you hear the kind of these things people say often, things like I had to wait till I hit rock bottom, or sometimes you have to let people fall so that they can catch themselves, because you can't hold other people forever. And I think that that's what they kind of mean is that, as a society, we have a tendency to complain a lot. We have a tendency to kind of complain to ourselves, complain to other people. We have a tendency to sit there and listen to everybody else complain instead of trying to find solutions for these things that we're complaining about. And I think that if you want to be a productive person and if you want to, if reaching your full potential and being successful in something is really your goal, then you have to, like, that's the first habit that you have to change. You have to decide, am I just complaining for the sake of making excuses for myself so that I don't have to move off this nail that's bothering me? Or, do I really need help to move? Or am I really looking for a solution or somewhere else to sit, per se, right? And I think that makes all the difference, So I think that if you can start by saying, I'm not ready to do something about this now, so I'm just not going to complain about it, at least. You know what I mean? And then you can focus your attention on whatever it is that you are ready to do, or whatever step it is you are ready to make. And it might be a smaller one, and it might be a step in this direction, but eventually maybe making that step will help build you confidence to want to, bring up this area of your life, and then it won't seem as scary. And I think that it's just important that you just keep moving in one way or another. But I think the number one rule is, just watch your complaining and decide, like, if you're going to be complaining about something, just don't complain. I think that's what, don't complain about things. Like, if there's something that's bothering you, find a solution. And if you're not willing to take the steps to towards that solution, then don't complain about it. And focus on something that you are willing to complain about. And if you want to help your friends out of situations, then you can, help by guiding them in that. Don't listen to people complain for the sake of complaining. You know what I mean? Hear them out, let them vent their frustrations, and then, ask them if they're trying to find a solution or if they just want to talk. And you can kind of, help people figure themselves out, I think, that way also. Yeah. But I don't know if that's clear. I have a tendency to go off into other topics when I try to talk about things, but that's the general concept. It's just
and I think that's amazing. I love that story. Thank you for sharing it, Ayisha. And a little bit what I got from it, it's like it starts with our thoughts. Like you said, if we're gonna complain about something, then what we're doing is feeding ourselves with those negative thoughts. And just keeps us there. But if we at least stop complaining and look at, well, our positive thoughts are gonna keep us away from that negativity, and eventually we end up seeing the solutions towards it. So I think you touched on something really major and important.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's all about, again, how you decide things are going to manifest themselves. And there's nothing wrong with being scared, and there's nothing wrong with not being ready also, right? You don't have to be ready to change and to move and to do things right away. But I think that if that's the case, then just be honest with yourself and acknowledge that right now you're just not ready to change or to move. And don't invest in further burying yourself by complaining and compacting it. Focus your energy on what you are willing to change and are capable of doing to move in the meantime, It's going to be more productive for you that way.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Ayisha, for taking the time, and wishing you all the best in your jiu-jitsu and on l'unité 9.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.